Hello and welcome to another episode of Found It, Fetched It. This week, myself and the amazing LWDG group expert Claire Denia are going to be talking all about knowing your dog's limits, the difference between pushing a dog and protecting the dog. Claire, before we start, how is your knee?
My knee is interesting. Yeah. I'm doing really well, actually. I'm a couple of weeks post surgery. Everything seems to be going in the right direction, but it's very odd. Having a robotic knee is odd. And it's learning how to walk again.
You're doing incredibly well because we are only 2.5 weeks post surgery recording this. And this will probably be out like a month after. People will be able to like check in with you and see how you're doing. But it has been quite a lot for you to go through. We are still like doing incredibly well.
Yeah, I am doing really well, actually. It's not been easy. They do warn you it's incredibly painful the first few weeks, and it is. They warn you about a lot of things, and I think you often think, how bad can it be? I've been in pain for the last 4 years with this. How bad can it be? But yeah, it is brutal, and but it's a massive learning curve. And again, it's I think sometimes I look at what I'm going through with my knee, and I very much try and apply the logic to working with training a dog because we come across these hurdles that maybe put our plans to one side for a while and have to reset things. And I think, yeah, I'm trying very much to be of the mindset that I'm using this time to gather my thoughts, to plan things, and just, as I say, apply this to helping other people as well. Because my dogs aren't being, well, my dogs are getting very little at the moment, and how resilient they are to cope with that has blown my mind, especially Rose. But poor John is doing everything. So none of our dogs are getting what they would normally get, and they're adapting brilliantly. So, yeah.
Fits in really with what we're going to be talking about today a little bit, and it's about becoming our dog's best advocate. We're going to talk and explore how to read the subtle cues of physical or mental fatigue and understand the difference between productivity challenge, harmful pressure, because there is very much a difference, and give listeners the confidence to say that's enough for today, even when they feel external pressure from those around them. So let's start by talking clear about pushing versus protecting, like the difference. What does pushing our dog actually looks like in training in a positive way?
Yeah, so when I'm looking at, I'm going to call it stretching a dog, because when I talk to my clients about this, I talk a lot about stretching the dog. So you get the dog to a certain point in their training, and then you want to get to the next level or the next step. And I describe that as stretching the dog's ability that little bit, just taking them outside of their comfort zone to learn the next thing. And this has been coming up a lot in my groups recently because people are progressing. And obviously, as you progress, training doesn't always look linear, and it doesn't always look like this perfect uphill climb. There's going to be dips and falls and challenges along the way. And one of the things that came up was about dogs regressing in other areas, or seeing a comeback of behavior that they thought they had gotten rid of months ago, and suddenly it pops up again. And very often, what we're not realizing as handlers is sometimes as you stretch the dog, and then you get to this like comfort zone and everything's going great, and you can get on top of those things and you can see improvements, and then you plateau. And you've got two choices at this point. You can either stay plateaued and work and it look very fluid, and it look seemingly to the watching eye, oh wow, doesn't that look beautiful? Or you can now try and take the dog to the next level and stretch them. And sometimes in doing so, you might see a little bit of leaking of behaviors that you thought that you had got rid of maybe some time ago. You might see a little bit of frustration coming out in the dog, or if the dog's understanding isn't fluid, isn't right, they might make mistakes. You might see little things that haven't happened for months, like a little bit of showboating or things like that, because the dog is just dealing with that emotion and that pressure and stress of being pushed on to the next level. So that's why I try and explain to clients that you're stretching your dog's ability.
So when we're stretching it, we're seeing them still actively engaged in what we're doing. They still want to be part of what we're doing. And it's a positive situation, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
not what the opposite, which is the harmful way where we are putting too much pressure on in the opposite. And I suppose we're not protecting them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a positive thing if you want to progress and move forward. If you're completely happy where you are with your dog and in their training journey, and you don't want to like progress to the next level, obviously that's your choice as a handler. But you do then run the risk that your dog might become bored. And so then you might get a resurgence or other little sneaky behaviors coming in because your dog is bored. And it's recognizing the difference and recognizing whether what you're seeing in your dog is as a result of them learning or as a result of them trying to find their own amusement in what's going on because they're bored. And they're very different things, but the symptoms can look the same. And this is like everything that we talk about in training and behavior. If we look at the symptom and we're just focused on the symptom, we're not getting to the root cause, and then we're not getting to that underlying cause and fixing that to progress the dog. So it's looking at, why is this happening? Because I see this a lot where clients go out and maybe they just repeat the same thing over and over because it's a comfort zone. Like where they are with their dog, that's what they do. They feel comfortable doing it, and they're worried that if they do it elsewhere or take it to a new environment or do this, it's going to go wrong. But then the wheels start falling off because the dog is bored, and the dog's like, but we've been doing this for 3 months, day in, day out, and this is not fulfilling me anymore. So it's recognizing that and understanding when to look and say, actually, I'm not working your mind, I'm not working your brain, or is it just that you're learning and we've got to push through this moment?
Yeah, because you're talking about, we've got a fantastic masterclass about building resilience that was done by Sam. We've got millions of brilliant masterclasses, but that one comes straight to mind when we're talking about this. And then you've got the sort of opposite, which is what you're talking about, which is like you've pushed them out of learning zone, they're into survival zone, or they the other side of that learning zone in boredom comfort zone. And
Yeah.
either side of that, like I know the saying, and I live by it, and I used to say to the kids all the time, if you're not growing, you're dying. And that's how it works in life. You've got to keep on trying to be better at something. And it doesn't have to be, like you said, it doesn't have to be massive jumps forward, but each day you want to be 1% better than the day before. So to get that 1%, like you said, it could be a change of situation, it could be a change of location. The dog is needing that from us in order for us to build our resilience and not do the opposite, which is break their trust by asking too much.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's the thing. When you are layering up your training methodically and you're ticking those boxes off as you go. So, have you got the duration of the behavior? Have you got distance if that's a requirement in the behavior? Have you been able to add in those distractions? And once you've ticked those boxes, you know that you're coming out of that kind of training phase in through that proofing phase into, now I've got this finished product and now I need to, what's next? Now I add on to this. So that keeps the dog growing. But it's recognizing that your dog is ready for that next level, that next step, and that if things seem to go wrong during that process, it's most likely just because you've changed something and you've now got to get the dog to understand, no, this is the same thing, but we've just increased the difficulty, and I'm going to show you how to overcome that and move to that next level. But I think people panic very often when this happens. So let's just say the dog has done a perfect delivery for 6 months doing the routines you've been doing, and then you start to increase the difficulty. It might be that the level of shot has been increased. It might be the amount of dogs you're training with has increased. It might be that the environment is more challenging. Doesn't really matter what it is, but it's a change that has made something seemingly more difficult for the dog. And so the dog all of a sudden goes, oh, this is fun and comes running back and like maybe messes around with the dummy a little bit, and they haven't done that for months. And it's because you've changed something and the dog is either overexcited or a little bit overwhelmed, or just simply just going, this is amazing, bring it on, and finding a little bit of fun in that. But it's recognizing that doesn't mean that the training has gone wrong. It just means you've pushed the dog on, you've stretched their ability, and you're asking a bit more. And sometimes dogs mentally tire much, much quicker than they tire physically, especially if you've got a dog that was bred to work for long durations of time, but you can tire their brains far quicker than their body. And so you might see those little odd behaviors creeping in because the dog is mentally tired, not physically tired. And it's really important not to confuse those two things.
So let's talk about the physical fatigue symptoms. What does a dog show us when it is closing down physically?
Yeah, so physically, you might see a slowing down of the retrieve. You might see more lackluster hunting. You might see a bit more panting, laying down in between things. That very often will be more of a physical fatigue that you're going to see. And it's recognizing what those things look like in your dog and knowing that. And so, yeah, they're the sort of things where I'm looking at, I'm like, the dog is getting physically fatigued. He's slowing down. He's slower to respond. Sometimes even your stop whistle, instead of them stopping like on a dime, they seem to take 3 to 5 seconds to stop. And you're like, oh, okay, maybe you're getting a bit tired there. So there's some of the things that I might look for in a gun dog.
What about the mental fatigue symptoms?
Yeah, so the mental fatigue symptoms are what I call, they look more like displacement behaviors. So behaviors that the dog displays out of context. So it could be that they start chewing the grass, or they start messing around or mouthing with the dummy, doing a little bit of showboating. It could be going off sniffing when they're not supposed to be doing that. It's like generally behaviors that are out of context, that, you know, like a dog when it starts scratching or yawning, but it's not tired or itchy. It's just the dog that I don't really know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to do this instead. But that's very much looking at the dog, and it could be they're mentally tired. And so they're just like doing odd behaviors that because they don't know what else to do with themselves.
I think it's easier to see when your dog is physically tired than mentally tired because mental tiredness can come across as being naughty.
Naughty. Yeah, exactly that. And I think that's the problem. A lot of people see that and they think the dog is being naughty, or some displacement behaviors very often are spoken about in terms of a dog that's feeling worried about something. But it's not just about being worried, it's just about feeling a bit of pressure or feeling a bit of stress. And as we've talked about in other podcasts, it's so important to build resilience in our dogs. We can't just back off every time the dog goes, oh, this is difficult. Otherwise, your dog will never learn to overcome things and be more capable in itself. And that's just really important.
We have to watch out though, don't we? Like for the flat dog rather than the checked out dog, because some dogs, even if they're not being pushed too much, they're not tired. Like my brain goes to Ella, third canvas dummy run, and she's acting like I've had her out there all day. Like it's the worst thing in the world. But that's just I can't be backsided to do this.
Yeah, it is. And again, this is where knowing your individual dog and knowing what your dog does in certain circumstances and things like that is so important. Because, yes, absolutely, you will get instances with some dogs where they have a limit to how much they can be bothered to do or how far they can be bothered to run. And you'll have some dogs that will hunt scented ground beautifully, but if they're not stupid and they get on the ground and like, there's nothing here to hunt for, they don't bother hunting. And yeah, it's recognizing these things and being a little bit more aware. What does your dog look like normally? What does your dog look like when it's physically tired? What does your dog look like when they're mentally challenged? And what do they look like when they're just basically not in the mood for it? And that's why having like a warm-up routine or warm-up exercises with your dog can be beneficial, because in those exercises you can gauge your dog and read your dog and make that decision. What are we looking like today? What's our training session going to look like today? Because although it's really good to have a planned training session with your dog, so you're not just winging it, you're not just going out there and going, what shall I do today? You also do need to be adaptable in your training. So you need to be prepared to go, actually, you seem quite tired today. You seem like you're not fully focused today. So maybe today isn't the right day to stretch you. Maybe today is the day to prove something you're already good at, or set you a small challenge that I know you can easily do. And sometimes when you do that, you shift the dog's mindset. So sometimes you could start with your dog a bit flat, and you could do the right setup at the beginning of your training session that switches your dog on, and they go, oh, I am up for this today, actually. So we don't always have to go, oh, the dog doesn't feel like it, so I'm not gonna. Because if you did that and your dog is that kind of lazy dog that kind of goes, I can't be bothered, and you just go, oh, today he can't be bothered, so I won't bother, you'll never get anything done with your dog, which is fine if you don't want to.
Yeah, and like we've talked at length about how habits form, and then the more you let them get away with it, the more that habit ingrains, and the more you are going to constantly face that wherever you go.
Yes, 100%. That's exactly it. And I think this is where people get stuck in a loop sometimes with their dogs. They get stuck in this loop where they go, oh, the dog doesn't want to do it today, so I'm not going to make him do anything today. The dog learns that they can control our behavior through their behavior. Of course, they can learn that. It would be undermining them as a species if we didn't think about that. They 100% can do that. And so we have to also know how to motivate our dog, and we have to understand consequences for actions with our dogs. So what motivates them to want to do things, what motivates them to not want to do things, the opposite, that consequence of like, if I don't do that, she's just going to pop my lead on and loose lead walk me instead of let me hunt. So like, consequence doesn't have to mean anything horrendously good and horrendously bad. It's just the dog learning that there's a consequence for their actions. And if we don't teach the dog that, they will start to dictate what they're going to do in that training session and in other behaviors as well.
We can also have issues with the dog that keeps going, can't we? So a dog that keeps going, and I won't say it's just Spaniels, I think it's probably the whole of the gun dog breeds. For a lot of them, even if they are like overfaced with something, they'll still keep on going 110%. So you have to be aware of what is enough.
Yeah, 100%. You see this a lot with working dogs because they're highly driven to do the job. And with some dogs in training, you might not get that, but on a shoot day out on the field working for real, you might actually see that where they will literally just keep going. And dogs will push through pain, dogs will push through fatigue to do the thing that they desire to do and that they find so rewarding. And so sometimes we have to make those decisions for the dog and be like, actually, you're done. I can see that you are done. And reading your dog and understanding what those signs look like in your dog so that you can make the right decisions for the dog in the moment.
I know with Rex, bless his little heart, like the only thing they'll tell me is his speed out, like literally, because he won't slow down. But I know, like, first run out, the speed, I'm really aware of that. And then whatever we're doing, an hour later, if he's like, even just slowing a bit, I'm like, enough, buddy. Because I know, like you said, I could keep on throwing dummies all day long and he would literally go until he dropped. And we do see that, like on a shoot day, dogs that will drop because they will literally push
Yeah.
themselves well over. And as us as owners, we have to just be thinking, where is their rest period? Because it's a little bit like us going to the gym. If we were smashing it, there's a reason we are taught to build in rest periods.
Yeah, 100%, exactly. And that rest and recovery is so important, and building the dog's fitness. But it's building the dog's fitness mentally and physically. Both things are important. You can't have one without the other. And it is important that you understand your dog and that you know what your dog's kind of limitations are. And you do get those working dogs as well that will go all day on a shoot day, but will only have 6 canvas dummy retrieves in them because they're like, yeah, I did that. What was the point in that? But they would happily pick up 30, 40, 50 birds in a day because the adrenaline is there, the excitement is there. And then they see the canvas dummy and they're like, yeah, I'll do the job, but maybe. But I usually find with dogs like that, keeping them on those canvas dummies during the season is really important. But equally, making their training on canvas more interesting, more fun, more challenging mentally, so that it's not like just a marked retrieve. Because you compare for that working dog, just a simple marked retrieve on a piece of canvas compared to that marked retrieve on a bird. I know which one my dog would rather have. That's not to say I allow them to make that choice, but which one they're going to prefer. So by making what they do on the canvas dummies more exciting, more challenging, they've got more get up and go to do it.
Let's be honest, I would probably run 100 meters for chocolate. I probably wouldn't do it for anything else.
Yeah, not for a bottle of water.
Where do you think the pressure to keep going comes from? Because, like, we talk about being out on a shoot day, there's a lot of external pressure there, isn't it? It's from other handlers being around you, gamekeepers needing to get the job done, being out maybe on the side of a mountain and giving up and coming home is not like a 2-second job. There's all these types of things as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Where does it come from? So I think there's so much external pressure, what other handlers are doing, how old their dogs are, how long their dogs have been doing it for. We see this all the time in training as well as on shoot days. And you want to do your best. And it's like it's a bit like having a child and you're really proud of what your child achieves at school or on sports day. You want to have that same vibe and feeling about your dog and be like, oh, my dog achieved this, they did this, they were amazing at this. And you do get a buzz out of that, definitely. And I think part of it is just it helps you to feel proud of where the training has got you. And that's a good reason to want to do it. But it's not so good if you're doing it because Joe Blogs down the road with the next dog is doing it and you're comparing yourself to them and their dog. That's not a reason to be doing it. And every dog is different and every handler is different because they have different experience with dogs, how many dogs they've trained, how difficult that first or second dog was compared to how difficult your dog is. And I think, yeah, this kind of like the age race podcast for me is one that I will always go back to with people when they're, but so and so's dog is only 2 and it's doing this, so and so's dog is only a year and a half and it's doing this, and it's, but that's not your dog. And I think we have to take those barriers down and just be like, some dogs just take longer to mature, but leads us on nicely to a slightly different thing. Yes, some dogs do take longer to mature and do things, but equally, if the training that we are doing with our dog isn't giving clarity, isn't giving us the result, we have to look at, is the reason the dog's not getting it because maybe what we're doing isn't clear. And that's another factor, because sometimes it's not that the dog's just taking longer, it's that the training isn't clear. The dog isn't getting the right message. They're not learning that this is what you want and this is what you don't want. And so we have to look at what's happening. And this is where videoing yourself, watching your dog, watching your handling is so beneficial, because you can have a look and go, actually, my timing was terrible there. Well, actually, if I had rewarded that in that moment, or if I had corrected the dog in that moment, the message would have been much clearer to the dog. And I think that's so important. If you've been doing something with your dog for 6 months and you're no further on, I think it's time to then look at yourself and say, am I doing something not quite right? Is there something I need to tweak to help the dog get the message?
You think when people join us and like they've been trying for ages on their own, and then like they come in, they do a bit with us, and they go, "Oh my God, I just can't believe it." Like this morning, I was reading somebody left comments on the long line masterclass, right? So I had to approve the comment, and they were like, "I cannot believe I have been doing this wrong all this time." And as I looked at it, I thought, I wonder what else people have commented similar. So I read through, I think it's about 14 comments. Everybody was like, I can't believe I was using the long line wrong. Can't believe I was using the long line wrong. And I'm like, look at that. Even that one thing where people think they're doing something absolutely perfectly
Yeah.
and they're not. And that's confusing them and it's confusing the dogs and not giving them the outcome they want. There is as well, I think, which I know from what we were like with the horses, right? I had a horse that would literally jump anything. So I could go, because it's very different to how dogs compete. I could go into the 12 2 and up. I could go into the 13 2 and up. I could go into the 14 2 and up. And I could go into the open. I could do all four classes. So I had a tiny little pony who would jump over a 5 bar gate. And she was amazing. And my father used to say, because I'd want to go in the next class, and he'd say to me, stop now, you will sour that horse. And he was real, real strong on it. And I think sometimes we are so wanting to do it ourselves that we will indirectly put so much pressure. Like we might have driven somewhere for 2 hours and then we've got there and we're like, oh, I'm going to work this dog, I'm going to train this dog all day. And halfway through the day, the dog's tired, it's warm or wherever. And instead of going, that's enough now, and calling it a day, they will think about the money lost, the time lost, and it is an investment to do these things. So I think we don't allow ourselves to finish on a good one because we just push and push.
Yeah, that it's really true. It is really true. And it's so important to understand this in our dogs and know what their limitations are and what we should do and how far that dog can be pushed. Like when I look back at Indy, Indy was like a proper what I call workaholic dog. She was just like she didn't want food when she was working. She didn't even want me to stroke her when she was working. She'd move her head away if I stroked her. And I could take her on a training day or a shoot day. She would pace herself really well and she would just go and go. And she never got bored of dummies. She never got bored of birds. She just loved it. It was just the way her mindset was as a dog. So she was the sort of dog I didn't have to think about it with. I could just book on a training day, whether it be 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever. And like I would know that she had that mental capacity to cope with that. And she also regulated herself physically really well. She was just one of those dogs. Rose is not that dog at all. When she was younger, she was very high energy. She would like exert herself really quickly and get tired mentally and physically very quickly. But she's also the sort of dog she just loves to have fun. So if the training feels too serious or feels too rigid, she will switch off mentally and be like, ugh, this is just like hard graft, really good. But and I have to watch her on a shoot day because her arousal levels are so high on a shoot day. And although she does use a lot of self control and she is a super steady dog, she doesn't control herself in exactly the same brilliant way that Indy did. And so I have to watch her. She needs a little bit more management on a shoot day to make sure she doesn't overdo it. And so it is recognizing the personality trait, I think. It's just what the dog's personality is. And it's being like, this dog can self regulate all of this really well. This dog maybe can't, or can in these circumstances, but can't in those circumstances. And it's recognizing that and adjusting your training and adjusting your journey with your dog to what will work best for that dog for longevity.
I think if we can all get in the mindsets, like short, brilliant sessions are far better than long, like rubbish ones. And if we're gonna do training days, not build up to it, but get your dog used to being out for a bit more and having rest throughout the day. Because if you've only ever done 15, 20 minutes in the garden,
Yeah.
every day and then you suddenly say okay we're going to go and do 8 hours you're gonna have to say oh I'm stepping out of this bit or whatever you need to control it. It's like the difference between a sprint and a marathon, isn't it?
Yeah.
One needs sustenance.
Yeah, and what I do with Rose, because I know she's that way inclined, if I do like a long training session with her, like a training day with friends or go to a training day or whatever, I will happily sit the odd retrieve out so she just gets those longer breaks between her goes quite happily because that's what works best for her. And so it's knowing that and saying, you know, actually, I can I pass that retrieve to someone else because I recognise that if I keep pushing her, we're not going to make it to the end of the day. It's just not going to happen. That's just her. She would be a fast, short sprint dog, not a marathon dog. And then, yeah, you get the dogs that are marathon dogs that can just run all day and do it all day. But it is recognizing it's not all about physical fitness, like we said earlier. Some of it is the mental capacity for that dog. And if you give them those breaks, then they can go longer with as long as they get the breaks within that longer duration.
I think as owners, we have to set the like non-negotiables, don't we? Knowing that if you're going to do an exercise 3 times and then you're going to have some rest and recovery, like not doing it 3 times, going, oh, I'll go fourth, I'll go fifth. It's just setting them up so that, I don't know, because I think we get overexcited, don't we? Especially if the dog's training well, we're like, oh, I'll do another one, I'll do another one. And how many times do we all say, I knew as I sent them, I shouldn't have sent them. We'd all do it, but I think if we've got like those non-negotiables and like building our habits of finishing before we think we need to.
Yeah, it's that not falling in that trap of having to do one more time, stopping beforehand when, and stopping the dog on that high, and so that you're not pushing them. Because that is definitely something. If I wanted to film something for a client with Indy, I knew that I could get away with filming that 6 or 8 times, and I'm not going to lose her by the eighth one. With Rose, if I'm filming something with a client, I'm probably better off to film right from the beginning, because I'm going to get to number 6 and she's going to go, yeah, this is really repetitive. Thank you very much. Not loving this anymore. So it's knowing those things when you're trying to do these things for these dogs. And like I say with Rose, if a client says to me, oh, Claire, can you do me a video on doing X, Y, or Z? And I'll be like, yeah, of course I can do that. I'm going to video the first one because if I don't and I do a couple and then I get the camera out, she's probably going to go, yeah, I'm done now. Thank you very much.
But this is where I think you use with Row position transitions really well, is that even between two retrieves,
Yeah,
you can have asked her to do 7 or 8 different things. And like I've watched your videos of her doing it, and you
yeah,
can see how much she loves it. It's
yeah.
almost like giving her a little energy boost. Because even though it's not a flat out settle, do nothing, that change is as good as a rest for her.
Oh, the change is better than the rest for her, in all honesty. So if I was, yeah, so the position transitions have become her favourite reward. When she was younger, Tuggy was her favourite reward. She's always been a bit hit or miss with food, but play and Tuggy when she was younger was her thing. As she's got older, position transitions and anything that is just an interaction between me and her, close up and personal, is far more valuable and rewarding to her than settling her. If I settle her, she'll just go to sleep. I had her out as a stooge dog for a client's one-to-one. It's not something I do very often, but sometimes clients ask me if it's possible, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I'll bring Rose along. And so it was just so that there was a dog there to see if client's dog could maintain focus with another dog present. So I put Rose in a sit and I just left her there and I was like coaching. And I looked round and she'd fallen asleep. So yeah, she is literally, oh, when you say stop and do nothing, that she takes it literally, we're stopping and doing nothing. So if I'm trying to keep her energy level high and I'm trying to keep her motivated to do the next thing, I actually find that settling her, then breaking her from that settled position, asking her to do a little bit of position transitions with me, even if it's like 3 or 4 seconds of contact heel or 3 or 4 seconds of sit to down or down to stand or whatever, it's enough that we're back on the same page together and then she's focused and ready to go.
As somebody who runs lots and lots of group training, it's fine for somebody to say, I think that's enough. I think I'm stepping back now. I think we all think, oh my God, the trainer will be really upset with us.
Yeah.
But I think they'd rather see us protect our dog.
Sometimes I will say to a client, I think you should sit this one out, give your dog a break, and they can do it on the next run because I can see their dog is mentally fatiguing. I can see those little behavior changes happening. But yeah, if I've got a group of between 4 to the max I'll have in a group and I'm teaching is 8 of a higher level, lower and a smaller level. But if I've got a group, I'm not watching every dog's body language every minuscule second. I can't possibly do that. I've only got 2 eyes that face one way. not an owl. And so if somebody says to me, can I sit this retrieve out? I'm not going to question that. I'm going to say, of course you can. Do you want to sit it out completely, or do you want to do it on the next run round? Because I'm understanding they're reading their dog, and that's what I need to work with. I'm not going to try and pigeonhole them and their dog into, this is my class and this is the exercise we're doing in this order and you must do this. If they want to amend something because they know it will work for their dog, and this does tend to happen more in the higher levels, like obviously more in the beginner levels, the foundation levels, clients are learning, and my job is to help the client learn how to read their dog, not expect them to know these things, because quite often they don't. So at those lower levels, that is part of my job, is to help that client learn how to read and advocate for their dog.
Sometimes at the lower levels, though, that's when we can see the most boredom in our dogs, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%, because there's a lot more coaching, there's a lot more steadiness, there's a lot more foundational work. And this is why everyone is in a rush to get to the flashy advanced stuff, because that's the stuff that looks super cool. But without your foundation stuff, getting to the advanced stuff is not going to happen.
Fabulous. For everybody listening, we hope you've enjoyed. Knowing your dog's limit is the skill, not pushing them through it. Challenge to you guys this week is to finish one session earlier than you think you need to and notice what happens, like how you walk away from it, how your dog walks away from it. We have on the Tuesday, March the 31st at 7:30, a free masterclass all about reading the dog in front of you. It's a supercar on a shoestring. We've run it once before and now we've taken some of your feedback, updated it, made it better, as we always do with everything in the LWDG, and we will be delivering that. If you want more information about that, pop over to our website. There's a banner at the top, www.thelwdg.com. It says free training. Click on that and you can join us. Thank you, Claire, for another amazing podcast. Is there any last tips, or have we gone through this in depth?
I think my key things would be learn to read your dog's behaviour when they are at their peak, and then you'll know when they're not at their peak. So understand what your dog's good performance looks like, know what your dog's performance looks like when they're mentally tiring, and know what your dog's performance looks like when they're physically tiring, so that you can amend your training for the best for your dog.
Fabulous. Thank you all for listening. Big thanks to Claire for another podcast, and we shall speak to you all in a fortnight's time.